Have you ever felt the pressure to teach to the test, particularly in an AP language class, only to wonder if it's actually helping students communicate more confidently? On this episode, I speak with Diego Ojeda, who is a Spanish teacher in Louisville, Kentucky, about how he has transformed his AP course through authentic projects that do more than prepare students for the exam, they prepare them for the real world. Diego shares how to design tasks that are rooted in authentic input, student voice, and cultural relevance, so that learners not only perform well on the AP exam, but also connect deeply with the language. So let's jump in. Whether you're planning your first lesson or celebrating your 20th year in the language classroom, I understand exactly where you are. I'm Joshua Cabral, and I'm also a language teacher in my 29th year of teaching. Now, I also have the opportunity to support schools and teachers all across the country who are working towards increasing proficiency and building confidence in their students. This is the World Language Classroom Podcast, with over 200 episodes of practical strategies tested in real classrooms just like yours and mine. So let's jump in. Vamos, allons-y. Hello, my friends. Bonjour, mes amis. Hola, mis amigos. Welcome to the World Language Classroom Podcast. I am Joshua Cabral, and you know I always have to start by thanking you. Thank you very much for being here. You're a teacher listening to a podcast about language teaching. So that tells me that you are interested in what you do, that you love what you do, and you want to be introspective about what you do. So thank you very much for taking the time each week to join me to talk about language teaching. So today we are going to talk about authentic projects and specifically looking at how you can transform your AP course with authentic projects. And joining me today is Diego Ojeda, and that is probably a name you have heard and you know who this gentleman is. He is incredible. I'm so happy to have him here. He is a Spanish teacher in Louisville, Kentucky, and he teaches at the Louisville Collegiate School. And he works a lot with teachers. You've probably seen many webinars with him. You've seen him present at various conferences. And he focuses on heritage learners and really CI, comprehensible input, and bring that into your classroom. And he has done a lot of work with CLET World Languages, and he has been a driving force behind several of their back-to-school conferences. And along with CLET, he is also an editor for their acquisition-driven readers and adding some materials to go along with that. So this topic is really important because actually Diego is going to be presenting on authentic projects to transform your AP course at ACTFL, and that's coming up in a couple of weeks. So we'll get some more details about that. I could talk about him forever because I think he's one of the most interesting people that I have come across, and I'm excited to have him here. So Diego, welcome to the World Language Classroom Podcast.
Well, thank you so much for that beautiful introduction, Joshua. It is a pleasure and an honor being here in your podcast. Thank you so much.
So as I mentioned when I was talking about what you do, you are very entrenched in the CI world and CI teaching. And so we look at CI, this is about input. That's what comprehensible input is. It's all about the input and making it really authentic and in the real world for students. And what does that mean to make it authentic and real world input in your language classroom with your students?
When I came to the United States 26 years ago, I came right away to be a Spanish teacher because I had been for 12 years a Spanish teacher, like a language arts Spanish in Colombia, my country. So I came here to teach 8th grade Spanish in a public school. I could not understand anything that my students were asking me or saying or commenting. So I had to make it really comprehensible to them. And I had to ask them to be very comprehensible when they will address or say something to me. So I believe that without knowing about comprehensible input at that time, 26 years ago, and not knowing much about Dr. Stephen Krashen or even Ben Slavic, I started kind of like using a form of comprehensible input out of necessity. So I believe that when we talk about comprehensible input in our language classes, we must put ourselves in a situation where communication is needed. There is a need to communicate in the target language. If students don't feel that urgency, if they don't feel that need, it's going to be really hard to this way. And we're here to talk about the AP class. And sometimes we think that the AP classes are beyond comprehensible input. That comprehensible input, it's only something that you will think about. I'm not going to say use, but think about when you are in novice levels, Spanish 1, Spanish 2. But in reality, the more comprehensible you teach your classes for the AP language, the more the students are going to connect with the language, with you, and with the class. And that's what starts making it real authentic. Because if the students do not connect with the language, with the class, then everything starts being very artificial. And they have one idea that is, this is another class, but authentic means that they see a purpose and they think that something honest and real. So I believe that comprehensible input is connected to any kind of effort that we make to help our students second language.
I think that when we do talk about CI and the examples that we often see tend to be novice level. And if you go to a workshop where you are, as a teacher, immersed in a lesson that's using CI to sort of prove the point that it's important, it ends up being a language that you don't know, so it ends up being very novice level. And so those tend to be the examples that we have. So I really appreciate you bringing it all the way through the trajectory of language learning and how it remains vital and important at that AP level. And so I would like to ask you, I don't personally teach the AP level, and so I have a solid understanding of what CI looks like in a level 1, level 2, level 3 classroom. So when you are engaging in something that you would label a CI activity in an AP class, what does that look like?
Okay, it looks like I want bring connection that are very close to the student's experience. I'm not going to say student's life because sometimes we think that we have to do everything that the students like. But no, students' experiences mean that I'm going to connect with whatever is, for example, happening in their. I'm going to connect with whatever is happening in their community. I'm going to connect with something that is happening worldwide. We usually need to start with their community. Usually in Spanish 1, 2, 3, we talk about them. But when we talk about AP classes, then we kind of like the scope is a little different, and we start like talking about bigger and wider spaces like their school, their community, and world. And the AP topics are connected to the world. So a way to bring comprehensible input is making that transition from their own experience to their school experience to the community experience and then the world experience, so they can have perspective. So that's very important. Now, it is also important that you, as an adult, as the teacher, as someone with experiences as well in life, you allow them to learn about your own experiences about any of the AP topics. Let's say we're talking about immigration. For them, how do I connect them right away? How do I create comprehensible input when I start talking about my own experience as an immigrant? And you don't have to be a native teacher or an immigrant teacher in order to catch their attention. Because as an adult, you probably have friends who have gone through this process. You are informed what it means to be an immigrant in the United States. But to them, it's so important to learn your views. And you don't have to do it with very complex vocabulary at first. You can start very small, but then incrementally, start using those words that are a little more academic and more high level that they're probably going to find in readings and audios that they will need to work with in the
Yeah, I appreciate that idea of always starting at home, their personal communities, and then moving out from there. I always think that's a very effective way for students to engage with content when they're learning it. Start from a place of their understanding, which would be the CI. Start from the place of understanding, even on a cultural level, and then it's sort of CI cultural understanding, and then moving out. So, as we dive a little deeper into our AP courses and to really look at this topic for today of authentic projects, and just to let everyone know that if you are at ACTFL, Diego is actually going to be presenting on this topic where you can see some visuals of his examples and see him dynamically talking about it in person. And that is a workshop that's being sponsored by CLET World Languages. So it will be in one of the exhibitor spaces, but you can get lots more details on Saturday with him in person at ACTFL. So let's talk about this. And before we look at specific projects, I just want to mention the fact that sometimes AP teachers, knowing that they're preparing students for an exam, the AP test exam at the end, they can sometimes have this mindset that you're on the treadmill of needing to teach the content to prepare them for the test. So how can we shift that focus to provide for space to engage in projects in our AP classrooms?
I understand what you say about, we have to teach to the, and that is anything that I share with you today here are experiences that I have gone through in these 26 years, and not all of them are great to me. Some of them have been painful. My first year, I have to confess that were a little bit painful in the sense that I thought that the AP teacher had to be this figure who had to just talk in a very high level language to their students and require that they will produce at the same level. So there's a pressure. There's a pressure because there's a test where your students, you want them to get at least a 3 in the exam. So we all feel that pressure, right? But the funny thing, Joshua, is that when students actually care about what they are doing, they end up getting better at the exam in a very natural way. When I was in this little town in Wisconsin, there was a little bit of friction between Hispanic students and non-Hispanic students in the town and therefore at school. So with the students, AP students, we came up with the idea of writing a page on the local newspaper in Spanish. On this page, each student will share something that they were good at. For example, this was a rural community, so there were students who knew very well how to drive on snowy roads. And they wanted to write about how to drive in snowy roads and how to be prepared to drive in snowy roads so the immigrants will understand that it's different and they will learn from that. So the students, they were caring about what they were learning. So the project was the newspaper, but each one of those articles were things that were really connected to the reality of the students and their interest. So instead of saying, like, for example, okay, let's practice for the email reply, because we are AP teachers, we're here to work on multiple choice, work on argumentative essay, work on email reply, work simulated conversation and cultural comparison. Instead of starting the school year like this, well, we're going to start preparing for the argumentative essay. Let's help the school write in an email introducing the activities that we offer to the new students. So how are we going to do that? So it's the same thing. We're talking about email, writing an email, same skills, but it feels real to the students. Okay. So that is the point. So the projects need to give the students a reason why to use Spanish. Mm-hmm. Not because of the grade, not because it's a credit requirement, not because it's a Spanish class, but a real, important, personal, relevant reason.
Yes. We often use this word project. So when you say a project, what is that definition for you? Sometimes we can think, oh, it's this 2-week project and it has all these elements, or maybe it's a one class project, so that we are all on the same page when we use that word. What does that mean to you?
To the students, project means an assignment, something we have to do. What does mean project in real life to humans? It means a goal. What is your life project? What are your goals? Why do we have goals in life? Because we want to accomplish the things that we want. So we have to work with the students to understand that we're here to help them accomplish things in life. Mm-hmm. And through these projects, quotation, we can learn so much.
There's a lot of talk in schools right now about change making. That's the be a change maker or change making classes. And what I'm hearing in that is that's exactly what you're doing with students. That's what the project is doing. They are maybe working towards a solution or understanding something better. And it's a way to bring that idea of change making into our language classes where it's actually happening already. I'm interested to know more about the student voice piece in there, personalizing it. Let's talk about that.
Share life experiences. How are you feeling? One thing is to ask them, how are you feeling today? If we allow the students and we listen to them and they feel that we're listening, then we can trust the moment we have a project. The other way, making sure that as language teachers, we're not correcting them every second. That we just let it flow. Mm-hmm. Let it. If they are presenting about something, let it flow. Then we have a conversation. Then get some better input. At some point, that their brain will start organizing mm-hmm. things, to make the corrections. But allow them to be themselves. Allow them express whatever they want to express the best they mm-hmm. and not all. Correct everything that there's.
If we just look at that idea of choice again, what are some examples where you have had a project where you have a theme, but then students have some choice within that theme? Can you tell us what that might look like to give us some ideas of how to navigate that in our classrooms?
Right. There's a project, La Revista de Mi Vida, mm-hmm. which is my life mag. I sometimes, and especially when I started working with this project, I would give them specific things to do. And as teachers, we like that, because we go to we're safe. Mm-hmm. But I noticed that then they start asking me, oh, Senor, can I talk about my vacation? Because almost every summer we go to Michigan to spend time with Grandpa and Grandma. But that wasn't part of the requirement. So I'm like, okay, if that's important to you, just bring those things. So these magazine projects have become their voice. So what are the things that have been so important in your life? So instead of telling the kid, okay, in order to use the imperfect tense, let's talk about your childhood and how was your first grade classroom, how was your experience with your teacher, and what you used to do in first grade. No, open it. So what was important during your childhood? Might be school, might be home, might be the neighborhood, might be family. I don't know, something different. They're still using the imperfect tense.
So you referenced earlier one of the themes, which is the aesthetics and beauty theme for the AP framework. And what's some advice that you would have for teachers who want to begin to design projects that align with these themes? Teachers might say, I have to do all of these themes, and then you come up with something that's maybe not great. So what's advice for taking on the themes?
That is such an important question, Joshua, because I have many teachers writing to me saying, I'm stuck. I don't know how to move forward. I don't know what to do with the contemporary life topic. They think, and I used to think this too, that there was just a magical, formula that you had to apply in order to work with those topics. But the reality is that my best advice for them is, number one, start small. And we're talking about families, start small. Talk about your family. Talk about your teacher family. We're going to talk about community. Start small. Let's look out of the window. We're going to talk about science. Let's start small. What do you use your phone for? What are the applications that you have? How many you have? How much time you spend on your phone? We're going to talk about contemporary life. Okay, what are the big things that are happening right now in our country? What do we care care about. So let's start small and then start, building from there. But most important, let's start human. Let's connect each AP topic with humanity, not with the curriculum. Because when we connect with humanity, everyone is connected because we're all humans. So pick one question that feels real for your students, my advice, and fits a theme, kind of like an essential question. Here are some examples that work everywhere. For example, families and communities. What makes our school feel like a community? That's an essential question. Okay, so let's create a mini campaign welcoming new students. Science and technology. How does technology help or hurt our daily life? Okay, they are involved there. Students make a short survey. Okay, surveys are so great for AP students. Contemporary life, for example. What do teenagers here in our community do for fun? So then we start exploring what teenagers do in other communities and outside of the country and in the Hispanic world for fun, which is quite different. You don't need perfect grammar or fancy tech to do these things. What matters is that students use the language, the target language, to express something that is real. It's important that when you design the rubric, also to think simple. And did they communicate the main idea clearly? Did they connect to the theme, the AP theme? And did they show effort and creativity? So that's already AP right there.
So I've been working with a lot of schools where they're looking at planning backwards their AP themes and starting in earlier years. Is that something that happens in your school where the themes are part of curriculum before the AP year?
In the previous class, Spanish 3, Spanish 4, we make sure that we are exposing the kids to these big topics, not really telling them that this is an AP topic that you're going to have to work with next year when you take the AP exam, but getting used to the language, to the ideas, making sure that we as teachers know what they think about specific topics that we're going to be treating later.
Yes. So I would be curious to know where you continue to pull your inspiration from and maybe some recommendations for teachers. I'm going to recommend something to them real quickly, and that is if they are at Actful, that they go to your workshop. So that's my recommendation if you're at Actful, and this is being sponsored by Clet World Languages. So it's a great space right in the exhibit hall, and you can spend some time with Diego as well. But that's my recommendation. Now, what are some of your recommendations for how teachers could be, moving forward with their learning?
I have two recommendations. Number one, listen to your students. Immerse yourself in every class, mentally, emotionally, with your students, because there's no better place to learn how to do this than by sharing that space and the time with your students. That's what, as a teacher, keeps me current, and as a presenter, it gives me examples that I can share with other teachers. And number two, there are great opportunities to learn from other teachers and not necessarily having to go to conferences, but through podcasts. And I encourage people, and I highly recommend your podcast, because I listen to the episodes of your podcast at least once every weekend. And it helps me so much listening to other teacher experiences and listening to the reflections that you have after these conversations. I believe it's quite important and it's current. I believe that's a very good way to stay current.
Oh, excellent. Well, thank you for that. I thank you for being with me on the podcast to share your ideas so that other teachers can hear it as well. If teachers want to be connecting with you, how can they do that?
I believe the best way right now is through Instagram. So my Instagram handle is SR_Ojeda, Ojeda.
As we finish up, I always like to leave our listeners with a great piece of advice that comes from your life experience, your teaching experience. But what's some advice you can leave us with today, Diego?
Okay, let's remember that even in AP, our goal isn't perfection. Our goal in the language class is connection. In the AP class, yes, of course, we prepare them for the exam. But the real win is when they start using Spanish to understand the world and to express who they are. We talk about this, student voice. And when students feel that their voices, that their stories and opinions matter in a Spanish class, they move from simply memorizing to communicating. And that's what the AP exam actually rewards. To me, and I always mention this, the AP class is not the end, Joshua. The AP class is the beginning. And if we do our job, the AP class should be that motivation and inspiration that keeps our students connected to the language and the culture.
Thank you very much for those very wise words and some great reminders about our relationships with students. I'm going to be thinking about that idea of let them tell their story, their voice, and their opinion. And that's what real communication is for them. And what's really also going to stick with me is something you said earlier where you said connect the AP topics to humanity and not the curriculum. I started by saying, we have to teach towards the test, and how do we get off that treadmill of feeling that way? And that is because we are connecting the AP topics to curriculum and not humanity. So it came full circle at the end when you said that. Well, I hope that our listeners will have a chance to see you in person and hear a lot more about this in Actful, doing your workshop with Colette World Languages on transforming your AP course. I really appreciate all of your insights and for spending the time with us today, and I hope to do it again soon. Muchísimas gracias, Diego.
Muchísimas gracias a ti. Un abrazo, Joshua.
What are your takeaways from that conversation with Diego Ojeda? I'm certainly thinking about student choice a bit more and finding ways to connect the content to humanity and not just the curriculum. So be sure to check out the show notes if you want to connect directly with Diego. And for me personally, thank you so much for all that you do on a daily basis to support and motivate your students. I very much appreciate and enjoy supporting you and your language teacher colleagues as you bring effective, proficiency-focused strategies into your classroom. A reminder that I provide on-site workshops, live virtual sessions, self-paced department PD, and my new Ready for Tomorrow Quick Win courses for individual teachers just like you. You can find all the links in the show notes or on my website, wlclassroom.com. I will talk to you soon. Bye for now. Thank you for listening. Be sure to follow or subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. And let's stay connected on social media. You can find me at WL Classroom pretty much everywhere. You'll also find lots of ideas, suggestions, and resources on my website, wlclassroom.com. Now stay curious, keep learning, and continue the great work you do inspiring and supporting your students.